At the edge of a forgotten road, far from the laughter of playgrounds and the warmth of streetlights, stood a house that looked like it had been abandoned by time itself. Its windows were cracked like spider webs, curtains stained and tattered from years of wind and neglect. Vines climbed its rotting walls like fingers trying to hold it together, but the paint peeled anyway, curling like old parchment. No one remembered the last time anyone lived there, or if they ever truly had. But someone had, and something still did. Behind the house, hidden from view by a collapsed wooden fence and overgrown thorn bushes, lay a patch of earth where sunlight barely reached. The ground was dry, cracked, and scattered with old bones, bits of plastic and a single dented metal bowl, long turned green with mildew. At the center of it all, tethered to a rusted pole that leaned sideways under its own weight, was a dog. Or at least what was left of one. His name wasn't Max. Not yet. He had no name. No voice ever called him. No hand had touched him in years. His fur, once thick and golden brown like sunlight on honey, was now patchy and dull, mottled with dirt and scabs. His ribs pressed painfully through his skin. His eyes, once bright and eager, had turned into two dull pools, empty, silent, tired. Not tired from sleep, but tired from waiting, from hoping, from hurting. No one remembered him. He had been left here as a puppy. He didn't understand it at first. His humans had laughed, played, and tossed him crumbs from the table. He remembered those early weeks, the thrill of discovering smells, the joy of wagging his tail and getting a pat. But then, things changed. The laughter stopped. The hands that once fed him turned cold. Then one day a rope became a chain, and the back door never opened again. The family left, packed up their cars and moved far away. And they didn't take him. Max waited. The first night alone he barked, loud, desperate. Surely someone would come back. He barked until his throat hurt, until it rained, until he couldn't feel his paws in the cold mud. But no one came. The lights never turned on. Again, the door never creaked open. The chain remained locked tight, its weight digging deeper into the tender skin around his neck. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. Seasons passed overhead like ghostly whispers, snow blanketing his tiny prison in winter, blazing heat cracking his paws in summer. He had no shelter except the shade of a broken piece of plywood, and even that often blew away in the wind. Some days the bowl had water, some days it didn't. Sometimes someone threw scraps over the fence, moldy bread, greasy bones. More, often nothing came, and so Max learned to survive without hope. He stopped barking. Barking brought nothing but hoarse silence. He stopped moving unless necessary. Movement wasted energy. He only rose when he absolutely had to stretch aching limbs, to relieve himself, to search for a better spot on the dirt where the bugs wouldn't bite so much. Children sometimes passed by on their way home from school. Some looked through the cracks in the fence and stared wide-eyed. Others jeered. A few tossed pebbles for fun, laughing when Max flinched. Once, someone spray-painted a cruel word on the outside wall. Beware. But Max was no threat. He had long since forgotten what it felt like to fight or protect. He had forgotten what it meant to be a dog. The only sound he still responded to was the wind. When it howled at night, rattling the trees and whispering through the holes in the fence, he would lift his head and whimper softly, as though calling to some invisible force to remember him, but even the wind offered no answers. One night, during a particularly bitter storm, Max pressed himself against the foundation wall, shivering so violently that his bones ached. The chain grew heavier when wet, digging into his neck like icy fingers. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't move. And for a long moment he thought maybe this was it. Maybe the loneliness, the pain, the cold had finally won. He laid his head down and closed his eyes. But something deep inside him still flickered. A small ember, a sliver of instinct, a whisper that said, "Hold on just a little longer." Because somewhere in the world, someone cared. They just didn't know about him yet. That house, the one nobody noticed, the one kids feared, and neighbors ignored, held a secret. A forgotten life tethered to a silent chain. A story waiting to be told. A soul longing for someone, anyone, to see past the rust, the dirt, the silence. And remember that he was still here, still breathing, still waiting. And as the clouds cleared and the first light of dawn painted the sky in pale gold, Max opened his eyes. Just another day, another chance to be seen. And though he didn't know it, yet this day would be different, because someone was about to take the wrong turn and finally find him. The morning sun was beginning to climb above the rooftops, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks of the quiet neighborhood. Birds chirped faintly from the wires above, and a light breeze stirred leaves that had fallen from trees too, old to bloom fully. It was an ordinary Tuesday, at least it seemed that way. Lily McKenna, a 26-year-old veterinary assistant, was running late. Her usual route to work was blocked due to construction, and her GPS rerouted her through the older, more forgotten part of town. She didn't like this detour. The houses felt empty, worn out, and there was a strange silence. Not peaceful but heavy, like a town holding its breath. As she drove slowly past the rundown properties, something caught her eye. Not movement, but stillness. It was unnatural. Out of instinct, she slowed the car near a particularly overgrown lot, where the grass had turned to brittle weeds and the fence was half swallowed by vines. There, behind the broken wooden slats, she saw him. First, she wasn't sure what she was looking at. A shadow? A statue? But then she saw the slightest twitch of an ear. Her heart skipped. She reversed a little, pulled over, and got out. The air smelled of mold and dust, but there was something else. Something older. Decay. Carefully, Lily walked along, the fence peering through the gaps until she reached a wider break near the back. And that's when she saw the full picture. A German shepherd, or what was left of one, lay curled on the dirt, wrapped in a circle of chain. His fur was matted, sparse in places and crawling with fleas. His eyes barely opened, his face sunken. Flies buzzed around his scabbed ears. The chain around his neck was rusted, tight and covered in years of grime. His bowl was upside down, dry, and cracked. There was no sign of recent food. Lily gasped, her hand covering her mouth, her legs locked in place, tears rushing to her eyes without permission. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh baby, what happened to you?" He didn't lift his head, didn't flinch. His chest rose and fell barely. Lily knelt slowly. She knew better than to rush. Her training as a vet tech had taught her that animals in pain, especially those broken by humans, needed time. But this was worse than anything she'd ever seen in her clinic. This wasn't just neglect. This was abandonment, isolation. A dog not only starved of food but starved of love. She reached into her purse and pulled out a half-eaten granola bar. She unwrapped it and gently held it through the fence. "Here, sweetheart. I know it's not much." For a long moment, the dog didn't move. But then, his nose twitched. A sniff. A flicker of instinct. He looked up. Just for a moment. And Lily saw his eyes. Not aggressive. Not wild. Just empty. Hollow. As if he had forgotten what it meant to be alive. Slowly, he inched forward, each step seeming to cost him everything. The chain clinked as he reached the fence, sniffed the food, and then, with trembling teeth, took it. Lily couldn't hold her tears back anymore. She wiped her face as she watched him chew painfully slow, his eyes never leaving hers, as though unsure whether to trust what he was experiencing. She whispered, "You've been waiting all this time, haven't you?" She stood up quickly, heart pounding. She ran back to her car, grabbed a bottle of water, and returned. Gently, she poured it into a small container and slid it through the fence. The dog drank like he hadn't in days. His ribs moved with every gulp, but something inside Lily had already shifted. She couldn't walk away. Not now, not ever. She called her clinic. "Dr. Patel, I'm sorry. "I need to be late. There's a dog. He's chained behind a house. I think he's been here for years." She called animal control. "There's a dog chained and abandoned. Please, someone needs to help now." They said they'd send someone, but it could take hours. That wasn't good enough. Lily left her car and walked around the block searching for an opening. She found a loose gate behind the house and slipped in. Thorns scraped her arms, and her jeans caught on rusty wire, but she didn't stop. Not until she stood before him, not behind a fence but face to face. The dog didn't move. He looked up at her with those same dead eyes but didn't growl, didn't bark, just watched. Lily crouched, trembling. "Hey boy, it's okay. I'm here now." She reached into her bag and pulled out her emergency clippers. The chain was thick, too thick for her basic tool. But the collar, the one embedded into his neck, was leather, soaked in filth but cuttable. She leaned in. He flinched. "It's okay," she whispered. "I won't hurt you." Slowly, carefully, she sliced the collar away. As it came off, he gasped, not audibly, but his whole body reacted, like something had finally let go. And then, he collapsed into her lap. Lily cried into his fur, holding his frail frame, whispering, "You're free now. You're okay. You're not alone anymore." The animal control officer finally arrived, shocked by what he saw. "He's in bad shape," he said softly, "but we'll get him help. You saved his life." "No," Lily replied, her voice raw. "He's been saving himself every single day for years. I'm just the one who finally noticed." She rode with them to the emergency vet, her hand resting gently on the dog's back the entire drive. His body was shaking, but his eyes were open. Not wide, not full of life yet, but open. Watching, not dead. Not gone. At the clinic, Lily filled out the paperwork. When they asked the dog's name, she paused. Then she smiled through her tears. "Max," she said. "His name is Max." And in that moment, the dog who had been forgotten by the world was remembered. The clinic was warm, a quiet hum of machines and soft-spoken voices drifting through the halls. Max had never known warmth like this before, not since he was a puppy. He was too weak to understand much. The soft touch of gloves against his fur, the cool pads of the exam table beneath him, the sound of scissors snipping through his matted coat. But for the first time in years, his body wasn't trembling from fear. He didn't know what safety felt like until now. Lily stayed beside him the entire time, sitting just out of the way, her eyes never leaving his. She had promised him he wasn't alone anymore, and she meant it. Every time Max flinched at a sudden movement, every time his muscles tensed with the memory of being struck or yanked by the chain, she whispered gently, "It's okay, Max. You're safe. You're doing so good." And though he didn't understand her words, he began to understand her tone, her presence. The veterinary team worked quickly. They cleaned his wounds, treated his infections, shaved away the filthy mats clinging to his skin. Beneath all that, Max was shockingly underweight. His body bore the scars of long-term neglect, pressure sores from lying on hard ground, ticks embedded deep in his ears, cracked paws from walking on blistering dirt. But he was alive. Somehow. Still breathing. Still holding on. "He's got a long road ahead," Dr. Patel said after the examination, his face tight with concern. "He's severely malnourished. His kidneys are struggling and his heart's weak, but he hasn't given up." Lily nodded, tears swelling in her eyes. "Neither will I." They moved Max into a quiet recovery kennel at the back of the shelter, away from the barking, the noise, the chaos of the other dogs. He needed calm. He needed peace. Lily laid an old fleece blanket inside, one she kept in her car, and gently helped Max onto it. He sank into the fabric as if unsure whether to relax or brace for pain. But slowly, inch by inch, he allowed himself to curl up and rest, and for the first time in a very long time he slept. The first few days were fragile. Max barely moved, except to drink water or nibble at the special wet food they offered him. Every muscle in his body resisted the idea of comfort. Every gentle hand made him flinch. He didn't bark. He didn't wag his tail. It was as if years of neglect had erased all his instincts to be a dog. He only stared, eyes following Lily. Whenever she entered the room, she visited him every morning before work and every night before going home. She spoke to him softly, read from a dog training book, and sat with her back against the kennel wall, letting him know she was there. She didn't reach for him unless he approached, and for the first week, he never did. One night, a thunderstorm rolled in. The power flickered briefly, and the dogs in the shelter began to howl and cry, afraid of the loud cracks in the sky. Max didn't howl. He didn't bark. But he stood, unsteady and frail, and walked slowly to the bars of his kennel where Lily sat. She looked up, surprised. "Max?" He lowered his head, pressing it lightly against the gate. Lily's breath caught in her chest. She opened the kennel slowly, sat down beside him, and extended her hand. Max didn't back away. He didn't run. He let her touch him, really touch him, for the first time. Her fingers gently stroked behind his ears, over his bony shoulders, down the patchy fur of his back. And for just a second his body shivered, not from fear, but release, as if something long locked away had begun to melt. "You're so brave," she whispered. "You're doing so good, Max." From that night on, something changed. It wasn't dramatic, no wagging tail or playful bark, but subtle. The way he began to lift his head when she walked in, the way he stood up when food came instead of waiting for it to be set down, the way his ears twitched when he heard her voice. He started physical therapy to rebuild his atrophied muscles. At first, he collapsed often. His legs, unused to freedom, would wobble beneath his weight. But he never gave up. One paw in front of the other, shaky and slow. Each step was an act of courage, and Lily was always there, cheering him on, whispering encouragement, crying behind her smile when he made it from one side of the room to the other without falling. Max began eating more regularly. His fur started to return, soft and golden at the tips. His wounds healed. The swelling around his paws subsided. Slowly, his weight increased. And even more slowly, so did something else: his trust. One morning, as Lily knelt down to refill his water, Max leaned forward and gently licked her hand. It was the smallest gesture, barely a touch. But to Lily, it was everything. It was the moment she knew. Max remembered what love felt like. Word spread in the clinic about Max's progress. Volunteers asked to meet him, to help walk him when he was strong enough. But Lily was careful. She shielded him from too much too soon. His past had taught him that people could disappear, hurt, forget. She didn't want him overwhelmed by attention or false hope. Instead, she kept the world small and gentle. One person, one promise, one day at a time. Lily started taking Max outside when the sun was soft and the air was quiet. He was hesitant at first, nose to the ground, unsure what to do without a chain holding him. But as the weeks passed, he began to explore, sniffing bushes, watching butterflies, listening to birds. Grass beneath his paws became a strange new joy. The sky above was no longer something to fear. The first time he ran, truly ran, was in the shelter's private garden. Lily unclipped his leash, unsure if he'd do anything. But Max stepped forward, looked back once as if for permission, and then took off. His gait was clumsy, still stiff. But his ears perked, his eyes wide, mouth open in a crooked grin. Lily laughed through tears. "That's it, Max, that's it, boy." He turned, barked, just once, and ran back to her, collapsing into her arms. In that moment, the chain that had bound him for years wasn't just gone from his neck. It was gone from his soul. It had been almost 3 months since Max's rescue. 3 months since Lily had found him chained behind that rotting fence, discarded like he didn't matter. But to Lily, Max had become everything. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, she would come to the shelter. And every morning Max would be waiting, sitting patiently by the kennel door, eyes bright with a hope that hadn't been there before. The transformation was slow but undeniable. His fur had begun to fill in, no longer thin and brittle, but soft and sleek along his back. His ribs, once visible under fragile skin, were now padded with healthy weight. He had scars, yes, both visible and hidden, but they no longer defined him. His eyes, which once stared blankly into nothing, now followed Lily with loyalty so deep it hurt to look away. Every evening, after her shift at the clinic, Lily would take Max out for their walk. But lately, she had started doing something more. She would bring him to her small apartment, just for a few hours, to let him experience what home felt like. She couldn't adopt him yet, not officially. Shelter rules, lease complications, red tape that tangled even the purest intentions. But in her heart, Max was already hers. That Wednesday evening, the sun was just dipping below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the city skyline. Lily pulled into her driveway, opened the back door of her car, and Max, wearing his new soft harness, hopped out with a gentle enthusiasm. He didn't bound like a young pup. His joints were still healing, but he moved with purpose now, like he knew the way. She led him inside, where he padded across her hardwood floor, sniffing the edges of her couch, the worn-out rug, and the food bowl she always set out for him. He paused near the window, staring out at the world, tail swaying slightly as if content just to be near her. She stood in the kitchen, making herself tea, and couldn't help smiling. "Max," she called gently. He turned immediately, ears perked, eyes wide. "You're so handsome," she whispered, kneeling to pet him. "Do you know how special you are?" He leaned into her hand, not flinching, not wary, just trusting. That night, Lily lay on the couch, Max curled up on the floor beside her, his head resting on a soft pillow she'd placed just for him. She watched him breathe, steady, peaceful, and thought back to that first day she'd found him. That shell of a dog, lifeless in a corner, clinging to survival by threads. Now he was healing. Now he was alive. The next morning at the clinic, something remarkable happened. It was early, the waiting room still quiet, and Max was resting in the office bed Lily had made for him. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9, entered with her father, holding a small puppy in her arms. She had bright eyes and wore a pink cast on her leg, decorated with glitter stickers. Her puppy had a limp, possibly a sprain, and while they waited, the girl spotted Max through the open door. She walked slowly toward him, curious. Lily noticed immediately and started to gently warn her. "Sweetheart, he's been through a lot. He's still..." But the girl had already reached him. Max lifted his head, alert. His body tensed, just slightly. The girl didn't speak. She just sat on the floor in front of him, cross-legged, and placed her hand on the ground. Palm up open, waiting. Max sniffed, and then, to Lily's astonishment, he inched forward. He didn't flinch, didn't retreat. He nudged her hand with his nose softly. The girl smiled. "You're a good boy," she whispered. "You were hurt, huh?" "Me too." Lily knelt beside them, unable to hide the tears building in her eyes. "His name is Max," she said gently. The girl nodded. "Hi, Max. I'm Emma." It was a moment so simple, yet profound. In that tiny exchange, Max had chosen to trust again. Not just Lily, but someone new, a stranger, a child. Later that evening, Lily sat on her porch with Max curled at her feet. The air was crisp, and the first stars had started to twinkle above them. She sipped her tea, her fingers absent-mindedly combing through his fur. He was so quiet, so still, but she knew his mind was always working, observing, remembering. She thought about his past and how little she actually knew. Who had chained him there? Why? What kind of life had he endured before he was discarded? The questions haunted her, And yet Max didn't seem to live in that past anymore. He was learning to live in the now, to believe that people could be kind. That touch didn't always hurt. That food would come, and water wouldn't be stolen, and love didn't have to be earned through obedience or pain. Suddenly, Max stood and placed his front paws gently on her lap. His eyes met hers and something passed between them, a gratitude, a knowing, and then, for the first time, Max licked her cheek. It was just one small kiss, one warm, tender gesture, but to Lily, it was everything. "You're safe now," she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. "You don't ever have to go back, I promise." The next day, Lily went to the shelter director. "I want to foster Max officially," she said, "and when my lease allows, I'm going to adopt him. He belongs with me." The director smiled, moved by her conviction. "It's about time," she said. As Lily signed the paperwork, Max sat beside her watching. His tail tapped the floor, a quiet rhythm of trust. That night, when they got home, Max didn't hesitate. He walked inside as if it had always been his home, curled up on his blanket in the living room and let out a long, content sigh. For the first time in years, he belonged. He wasn't the chained dog anymore. He was Max, survivor, fighter, companion. And in that little apartment, wrapped in the warmth of quiet love, he began to dream again. The seasons changed slowly, quietly, as if the world itself was holding its breath to witness something extraordinary. Max, once a frail shadow of a dog, had grown into a symbol of resilience. The chain that had once dug cruelly into his neck was now replaced by a soft collar bearing a name tag shaped like a tiny heart. On it were 5 letters that had come to mean everything: Max. And below them, Lily's phone number, followed by the word, loved. It had been 6 months since Lily officially became Max's foster, and her lease had finally been updated to allow dogs. The moment the ink dried on the adoption papers, Lily scooped Max into her arms and whispered through tears, "You're mine now. Forever." Max had learned to wag his tail fully by then, not the shy, hesitant twitch it once was, but a full, proud wave of joy. He licked her face gently as if to say, "I've always been yours." Life at Lily's apartment transformed into a warm rhythm. Mornings were filled with long walks through the quiet neighborhood, where Max now trotted confidently, sniffing mailboxes and wagging at friendly neighbors. Some even knew his name. "There's the miracle dog," old Mrs. Bennett would call, from her porch, and Max would lift his ears and give a soft bark, no longer afraid of strangers, no longer flinching from noise. Lily had taken time off work to focus more on Max's adjustment. She built a routine that gave him confidence: breakfast at 7:30 a.m., followed by a walk, then rest in the sunny patch near her living room window. In the evenings, she'd read aloud to him or sit beside him on the floor with her laptop, while Max rested his head in her lap. He loved the sound of her voice, the gentle cadence that promised safety, every word wrapped in love. But one day something new happened. Lily was sitting on the floor, folding laundry, when Max patted over and placed something at her feet. At first she didn't recognize it. A small frayed toy from the shelter barely held together, something she thought he had no interest in. He nudged it forward and then sat, watching her expectantly. "You want to play?" she asked, surprised. His tail wagged once, just once, but it was enough. She picked up the toy and gently tossed it across the room. Max hesitated, unsure. But then, like a memory breaking through, he bounded, a little awkward, a little slow, and brought it back. He didn't release it right away, though. He looked into her eyes as if saying, "Are you sure this is okay? Am I allowed to be happy?" "Yes, Max," she whispered, tears rising in her eyes. "You are allowed to be happy now." That was the first day he played. Really played. They spent the afternoon tossing the toy back and forth, laughing, tumbling across the floor. Max barked, a joyful, high-pitched yip she had never heard before. For hours it felt like time had turned backward. like he was a puppy again, free from every chain that had ever held him. That night, Max fell asleep curled beside her bed, his toy still tucked beneath one paw. But as beautiful as the present was, Lily knew there would always be ghosts. Max still had nightmares. Some nights he would wake up trembling, whimpering, his legs twitching like he was running from something. On those nights, Lily would climb out of bed, curl beside him, and hum a lullaby she remembered from childhood. "You're safe, Max," she'd whisper again and again. "No more chains, no more fear. Just love." Eventually, his breathing would slow. His muscles would relax. He'd nuzzle against her and fall back asleep. It wasn't perfect. Healing never was. But it was real. One morning, Lily received a letter in the mail. It was from the local animal rescue organization. They'd heard Max's story through a staff member at the shelter and wanted to feature him in their annual newsletter as a survivor spotlight. Lily was hesitant at first. Max had been through so much. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized. Max's story could inspire change, could give hope to others, could shine a light on dogs still chained, still waiting. The photo shoot was scheduled for the following week. On the day of the shoot, Lily gave Max a bath, brushed his fur until it gleamed, and placed a red bandana around his neck. It read, "Rescued and loved." Max sat in front of the camera, tail wagging, eyes calm. The photographer knelt to his level. "He looks like he's seen heaven," she said. Lily smiled. "He has. He just didn't realize it at first." The article was published the next month. It included before and after photos. The image of Max chained to a rusted fence, bones, visible beneath filthy fur, beside a photo of him smiling in Lily's living room, his eyes bright and alive. It went viral. People from around the world sent letters, donations, and messages of love. Many adopted or fostered dogs who had been rescued from similar circumstances. The shelter received more volunteers than ever before, but Max didn't know any of that. What he knew was this: he had a bed, a bowl, a name, a person, a life. One evening, as autumn rolled in and the leaves began to fall in golden piles, Lily took Max for a walk in the park. The air was crisp, the sky painted in oranges and pinks. They reached a quiet clearing, and Lily sat on a bench, letting Max explore. He wandered a few steps away, sniffing, tail high. Then, something caught his attention, a man walking a young pit bull pup. The chain around the pup's neck was too tight. The man jerked it hard when the dog barked. Max froze, his ears lowered, his muscles tensed. Lily saw it instantly. "Max, it's okay. You're with me." He turned, eyes locking on hers, and then he walked back to her, pressing his head against her knee. She wrapped her arms around him. "That's right, boy. You're free now." The pup and the man walked on. Lily took a deep breath. Maybe someday someone would step in for that puppy, the way she had for Max. Maybe Max's story would ripple outward in ways they couldn't even see. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Max looked up at Lily. His eyes weren't haunted anymore. They were soft, calm, filled with a kind of peace that had taken months to grow. "You're my heart," Lily whispered. "You always will be." He leaned in, licked her hand once, and then lay beside her on the bench, resting his head in her lap. No chains, no fear, just love, forever.